Good morning and welcome to Coffee with Alain. As you can see, we're going to talk about books this Saturday. Ogilvy on Advertising, The Secret by Lee Child and Andrew Child. Those are the two books that will be coming up today. Looking forward to talking about those. Before we get on with those books, want to remind you about yesterday's show. If you didn't catch yesterday's interview with Phil Elmore, go back and check it out, especially if you're interested in self-defense. We debunked a number of self-defense sayings that are just totally BS and provided a lot of good information. Phil's been in the business and written books about this and articles about this for decades. So a lot of good information came out in yesterday's show. We went a little over an hour. I mean, if you watch the video replay, it's going to be about an hour and 10, 12 minutes. I edited up some of the dead space and some of that, and it's still over an hour if you listen to the podcast. But check that out yesterday with Phil Elmore. Really good show. A lot of good information on self-defense yesterday. Today, we're going to be talking about the books. So I have my book mug, drinking out of it, books that I enjoyed as a kid, hoping that you will enjoy books as well. And speaking of books, something that was interesting, the end of the show yesterday, when I was a kid, besides the Tarzan books and the Conan that are like on my mug today, in the 70s, I was also reading the Executioner and the Destroyer books. Probably not old enough to really should have been reading those, but again, I was reading all the books that were way past my age. There was nothing in the elementary, junior high libraries that interested me in elementary school. I was the only elementary school kid going to the high school library. And I had an older stepbrother who was reading Destroyer and Executioner. So I started reading them. I learned about snuff movies when I was like in 3rd or 4th grade reading these books. The interesting thing about that is reading those books so many years ago. Well, I didn't imagine at that time that I would be interviewing a person who wrote Executioner books. Now, of course, the ones I read in the 70s were Don Pendleton. He was writing all of them. But when he stopped writing them, they continued the series with different authors, and Phil Elmore wrote 23 of the Executioner Mac Bolan books before they discontinued the series entirely. So that was just sort of an interesting little book trivia there from yesterday's show. But let's get into today's books. I'm going to talk about Lee Child's book first. Now, before I talk about Lee Child, I'm going to say good morning to Jay and Vicky. Appreciate them being here and saying good morning. Thank you both. Hope you're doing well this Saturday. I've been reading the Lee Child, Jack Reacher books for years. I've read every one of them. I didn't read them all in order because I actually started, I found one at the library, checked it out. Oh, this was a good book. And then I went back to the first one and found them all in used bookstores and caught up to where they were at that time. And then I've been reading the brand new one every year. This one actually came out last year. I think I got it for Christmas, and then I finally got it worked into my reading. Really enjoyed it. This one, Jack Reacher, they go back in time when he was younger and still in the military. Still a good story. The guys, both of them, Lee Child and his brother Andrew Child, and those are pen names that they use for these series. Just good storytellers. I've enjoyed all of these. Enjoyed the movies with Tom Cruise, even though Tom Cruise doesn't live up to the physicality of Jack Reacher, who's a big guy, and Tom Cruise isn't. Really like the new series where they have Alain in there as the actor who is big like Jack Reacher. I'm looking forward to the next season of it, but the books are just great. I really enjoy them. These are books that I have not donated yet. There's a few novel series, my Tom Clancy, my Lee Child, my Brad Thor, that I'm not getting rid of, even though I'm reading them, because I may want to read them again in the future before I ever get rid of the series. So enjoyed this. Younger Jack Reacher in the military, trying to solve some stuff. They put on a team with a couple others, and they're trying to solve things, and it twists and turns, and it's a good story. And it involves, you know, a couple killers that are highly trained and unusual, and it weaves around. You know, I don't want to give stuff, you know, spoilers of the book. Just, it was fun read. So if you like action, if you like the TV show, you know, the new series that's out, if you like the movies, you like the books. And I like the books better than the TV and better than the movies, just because I'm a book person, and I've just really enjoyed all of them. And they've changed a little bit throughout the years, but they're still just good reads. Now we're going to look at an old book, Ogilvy on Advertising. Very old book. I think it was written in the 80s. I believe David Ogilvy died in 99 or somewhere right in there, in the 90s. So why am I reading this old book? Well, my daughter happens to be doing an internship with the Seoul, Korea office of Ogilvy. Huge company. They're in like 180 countries, I believe, something like that. They're all over the world. And so she is doing an internship in South Korea at the Seoul office of Ogilvy this summer. That's why I'm reading this book. And it's an older book, and it's on advertising. And a lot of it is old. I mean, because, I mean, he was doing print advertising, magazine advertising, and then television advertising. This was all before the internet and any of the stuff we have today. But a lot of the principles, the principles behind the advertising are just as relevant in today's mediums. Okay. Well, it's not the same. We're not maybe doing it for newspapers or magazines like he was. Some of the foundational principles on advertising, they're still sound. It's just you have to change them a little bit for today's, whether it's the internet or how TikTok or whatever you're putting them out on. But some of the things are just as sound. And so I found it an interesting book, even, and I remember some of these old ads from the 70s and 80s and so forth. And so I found it sort of interesting. And I just thought it was cool to read the book, just because my daughter's going to be working for that company this summer. And so I found the book at the used bookstore, right? It was funny because it was the day after daughter told us she was interviewing for this company for the summer. And she had to do half of the interview in Korean, which, you know, made her a little bit nervous too. And so I'm at the used bookstore, and boom, I saw that book. It's like, oh, that's the company Cosette's interviewing with. And so I grabbed the book at the used bookstore, and she did get the internship. And so I'm reading it right. I just read it, and it was a good book. I see why he became who he became. I mean, the man was brilliant in the advertising world. And that's why his company is still going, and it's in, you know, 180 countries or so. It's around the world. Interesting thing, my daughter's in South Korea right now, but she's not at this company yet. She went over there for 10 days with her Korean class because she's taking Korean at Penn. She has to fly back to JFK, stay in the JFK airport after the 10-day trip, and then she will fly back to Korea to start the internship and be there until August. And then she'll come to Montana for a couple of weeks in August before she goes back to Penn. She wasn't allowed to just stay in Korea. It was 2 different programs. She had the class trip, had to come back, and then she goes over on the internship and then comes back. But she will be there here in another week or so. When the class trip is over, she'll come back, and then she'll go back and start with the Ogilvy office there in Seoul. I'm sure it's going to be a nice area of Seoul. I'm sure, because I know Koreans, and a big company like this, she's going to be treated really well, and she's going to learn some stuff, and it's going to be a great experience for her. Jay said, very cool. I think you were talking about maybe the Phil Elmore, and Phil wrote the Executioner books that we talked a little bit about yesterday. I'm going to plug that one more time. Yesterday's interview, great interview. You want to check that out. Hope to have some other great interviews coming up, including this coming Friday. I'll talk more about that on this week as I'm advertising Friday's show, but next Friday is going to be a great interview as well. But yesterday's, check that one out if you didn't get a chance to watch or listen to it. The audio podcast is up. Should be able to find it on Apple, Spotify, or the Enjoy Life Safely website. The videos are on the Enjoy Life Safety website blog, as well as LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. Dixon says, how big is your to be read pile? Bookcases full. I mean, I amassed books, and I probably had over 10,000 books at one time. I've been getting rid of books, but I keep buying new ones too. Like I bought this one just, not long ago when Cosette got that internship. I got a brand new signed one I'm anxiously waiting for in the mail right now that the author is sending me one. But I have just a ton of books. Some of them I only cherry pick to read. Some of them I've read and I want to read again. Some of them I'm going through the shelf and said, I read that. I don't want to read it again. And they're finally going in the donate pile. But my to be read pile is huge. I will never get through it because I keep adding to it. And that's okay. I think I have read 65 or 66 books this year already. I've read a lot these last couple of weeks because of my back. So, which is getting better. They got me on new drugs. Started prednisone yesterday along with the hydrocodone. So I got some good drugs going on. And last night was the best sleep I had in several weeks. I mean, I actually got some sleep. The pain's not completely gone, but it was better. But I just read. And I think I've read 65 books now because I keep track. It's easy to keep track because they're all on Goodread. And that's why at the end of the year, I print out that big picture of all the books I've read. It's easy to do because I just keep track in Goodreads. And sometimes I grab a book and I put in the IBN number and it's like, oh, I did read this 10 years ago. Now I'm going to read it again and decide if I'm going to keep it or not. So that's sort of my to be read pile. It is pretty big. But for today, those two books, enjoyed them both for different reasons. Lee Child, I really like the Jack Reacher novels. I've read every one of them. I've enjoyed all of them. I've enjoyed the movies. I enjoy the TV show. Looking forward to the next ones. This one, it was good. It's basic principles. And I read it more because my daughter is going to be working for that company for the summer. And I just thought it was sort of cool that she's working there and thought I would read the book. It definitely is dated, but again, some of the principles and the foundational elements are timeless, regardless of what medium you actually use. So those are the two books today. Want everybody to go out, have a spectacular Saturday. We will see you all tomorrow.